So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Palestinian Pulitzer winner versus American media, and so this is, yeah, pretty painful to be honest with you.
You've made in the past about the Israeli hostages have been very controversial, where you have said that most of the hostages held by Hamas are not actually hostages. I believe you specifically singled out Emily Damari, who's a 28-year-old who was kidnapped from her home and held for 471 days. And lost 2 fingers. I'm just wondering, is there anything you want to clarify about those comments?
First of all, I did not question her status as a hostage, because
you would think that if you're going to come up with an accusation like that, you would actually pull out his actual quote on this. That would have made it more effective, you know, as your job as a journalist.
Because she's a hostage, but because what other Palestinians who were kidnapped. I mean, I don't want to name people, but I have people in my family who were kidnapped from checkpoints, from schools, from shelters, and they are named prisoners. So my question was, why should Emily and other hostages be named hostages while my loved ones should be named prisoners? So that was the question. I've never denied anyone suffering. I know that everyone is suffering, Israelis and Palestinians. But why are our sufferings not acknowledged? Why are we called terrorists? Why are we called prisoners of war, while the Israelis who were kidnapped from Israel are named hostage? Does this give them more humanity because they are Israelis, while my loved ones are being named prisoners and they are tortured? I mean, I myself, by the way, I was kept hostage for 53 hours. I was blindfolded and handcuffed and was beaten in my face and asked for the Israeli soldiers to see a doctor, and they denied me any medical treatment. So no one is talking about this. Why?
So that's illegal under international law. You can't do that to you. I'm assuming they would have kept him as a prisoner of war or something like that. That's illegal. You can't go around beating prisoners up and things like that. And it does go to show you that there is a language difference here, which is important to point out, as he does, which is that there are many Palestinians taken by Israel. This has been happening long before October 7th, where they take them without cause and they keep them locked up. That's why you're seeing hundreds being released in kind of hostage exchanges between Hamas and Israel.
They are not acknowledging my suffering. So I questioned, why are they given this privilege of being called a hostage, while I am called in all the social, in all news platforms, I was detained, I was a prisoner. Why? Am I less human than anyone else? So that was the question. It was not the question that she was not kidnapped, that she was not tortured. I did not talk about any of this.
Well, you did criticize some Western outlets for humanizing the hostages.
Because we are not humanized.
Well, I guess my question to you is, wouldn't the better approach be to humanize everyone, to treat all humans?
So you're expecting the person who was a victim of Israel to humanize everyone here, when you yourself in the media wouldn't do that? Like, you know, you haven't even acknowledged the point that he made in terms of the language differences. Acknowledged the point that he was a victim in this. And now you're arguing, you know, we should humanize everyone, when one side is refusing to do that, and that is not the side. That is the side that kidnapped him.
Do you know what I'm going through every day?
I cannot even imagine.
Do you know how many members of my family were killed?
I cannot even
31
imagine.
members of my family were killed in one airstrike. And 4 of them were first cousins, were killed, 2 of them with their husband and their children. And you are questioning me how to use language here?
Oh, you brought it up. I'm just asking you to...
No, you brought it up. You brought it up. That was the point. You brought up the fact that he was, you know, you. I don't know if you fabricated this point, but you know, arguing, like, talking about a specific person, you know, not being a hostage. You brought up the importance of language. Like, this is you're gaslighting someone here.
To elaborate on comments you had made that have attracted a lot of criticism. That's all.
You brought up his comments. Like, you wanted to obviously address this point, and now you're trying to tell him he's the one that brought up the language issue when it was her.
Well, I mean, you know what? There is the point, and I would like everyone to understand it. A Palestinian won a Pulitzer Prize. What do you expect the other side to say? Are they going to celebrate it? And by the way, the win is not my win as Musab. It is for the stories that I shared with the whole world. And I promise you, there are so many stories that I haven't written. One story, because they mentioned that Emily was kidnapped for 500 days. And I'm not denying this. But I would like to tell you that a cousin of mine was killed in October 2023, and her body remained under the rubble for 558 days. and still her husband and their child is still under the rubble until today. So I don't want to compare several. I hate this. But I mean, 560 days under the rubble. She was killed. She was not kidnapped. She did not lose 2 fingers. I lost members of my family. And this is not to minimize her suffering. I've never attacked her as a human being. But I was questioning, why should we humanize this soldier? And she was a soldier. And the other hostage was a soldier too. So I'm not making stories up. I was questioning, why should we sympathize with this soldier who a few days later after her release went to celebrate who? Her sister who graduated from the Air Force. What is the Israeli Air Force? They are responsible for the killing of my family.
The Israeli Air Force have done the major damage in this conflict anyways. They're the ones that have been, tearing down whole residential buildings and bombing refugee camps. So, to show any sympathy for someone who's gone on to celebrate their relative who's going to go into the Air Force to carry on this this genocide is just crazy business.
So why am I supposed to sympathize with her? Not because she is A and B, but no, because she is celebrating the graduation from the Air Force of a sister who, and by the way, one last point. In 2009, I was injured in an airstrike. One piece of shrapnel pierced my neck 3 centimeters away from my windpipe. And in that airstrike, 7 people were killed. So the question, who was going to kill me as a 16-year-old child?
This is what I mean. Like, this is just the most pathetic attempt from this CNN host sorry, not CNN, MSNBC, trying to really just go after a Palestinian person who really should, they should be praising this person. Winning a Pulitzer is no joke. It's a massive, it's a prestigious award, and she's gone on attacking him over his use of language and certain words he may or may not have used, but she didn't come up with quotes or anything. It's pathetic. This conversation's been in the news a lot more in the UK. There was this clip here discussing the fact that Labour had actually increased the amount of arms sales to Israel, and the certain members of the Labour Party arguing, we have diplomatic weight, but then they're not doing much. And there's a growing conversation in Labour trying to put pressure on the government to actually do something, because they're not doing a lot.
Are you disappointed or unsurprised in terms of what we've heard from Keir Starmer on this?
Disappointed, but they're, like you said, not really surprised, because Keir Starmer's rhetoric from the beginning, let's not forget that he called for the collective punishment. The siege that Israel has now imposed on Gaza, Keir Starmer was on LBC actually, with Nick Ferrari, I believe, and he made the point that Israel does have the right to impose the collective punishment and the siege on Gaza, and his rhetoric since has been an endorsement of that. I mean, it was revealed recently that the arms that Britain and the assistance that Britain has provided with Israel in the last in 3 months surpassed what the Tories did for 3 years, and that just goes to show the extent of this Labour collaboration. When we talk about complicity, it's more than that; it's participation. When we talk about the blood that's on Israel's hands, that blood is soaked on the Labour Party's hands as well. It's blood that will never wash. And as you said, it's disappointing but unsurprising. So
it goes beyond F-36 parts and things like that, the jet parts and things like that. Like, there have been more and more documents coming out that the Foreign Office has been lying about arms that are being supplied. The fact that they increased the amount of weapons licenses last year, despite Lamy saying the opposite. There is something really strange with that. The fact that they're flying spy planes as well, for recon for Israel. It's just there's a lot of questions that need to be asked of the Foreign Office and also the Ministry of Defence, because the UK is complicit in this. This is just when you listen to people from Palestine, it's just heartbreaking. The fact that he was almost killed when he was 16. He was detained by Israel. What cause did they give him? No, and he lost 31 members of his family in one strike. His family is still not going to be safe because he's more famous now, and they can track down his family members and they can kill him in retribution. They've done that before as well. They killed a lady who recently won an award. I think it was in France, a Cannes Award or something like that. She wasn't there to celebrate that because she was killed. Like, it's just this is one of the hardest conflicts to talk about, because it's not a conflict, it's not a war, it's a slaughter. Like, they're killing people en masse indiscriminately. This is one of the worst things that we will see over the over the last few years, but also the next few years as well. You know, they've only just recently partially lifted the blockade. You know, you got the UN begging Israel, you know, let us come in with the food, because there are people who are going to die of starvation from Israel's blockade, and nothing's being done. You know, if one of these countries, like if the US or whoever said, no, we're going to break the blockade, we don't care, do something about it, it would force Israel to back down. There's no way they're shooting, you know, foreign soldiers. But, you know, the fact is that they're just coward. It's just cowardly. You know, they could even do it on the Egyptian side, but you know that's where the Israel blockade is. You know, they have no right to be there. This is heartbreaking. As I said, but it's been like this since it really kicked off, I guess. But you know, it's just the world just watches on. That's the main issue I have. But you know, so I'm gonna leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.